Hi guys, it's Alex here with Recombo, and I have here the Galaxy Nexus and this year's successor, the LG Nexus 4. The Galaxy Nexus is actually it's a Samsung built phone. It's predominantly a plastic construction with a plastic backing here and a curved glass front. I don't know if you can see the curvature there on the display. The feel on the hand is really quite nice, even though the plastic does give it a slightly cheaper feel comparatively to the LG Nexus 4 here, which features a glass back, more akin to an iPhone 4S that you might recognise. On the front we have a 4.65 inch and a 4.7 inch display respectively on each device. They both have 1.3 megapixel front facing cameras. The earpiece, there's a band around the edge which is plastic on both devices. However, the LG features a chromed strip. All the controls are in the same place. We have power lock keys on the right hand side, you can see that, and volume rockers on the left. Samsung opted for a more centre justified design with a centrally mounted camera, an LED flash, centrally mounted loudspeaker and a centrally mounted USB port with the headphone jack on the bottom, whilst LG have gone for an offset camera and flash. On the opposing side, an offset loudspeaker, a centrally mounted USB port, and the headphone jack is actually on the top, up here. Both phones look and feel really quite nice, but the LG has a really nice feel, particularly from this curved Gorilla Glass 2 on the front here. Now, as you can see, there's actually quite a significant colour difference between these two devices. The Galaxy Nexus here uses a 4.65 inch 720p HD Super AMOLED display, whilst the Nexus 4 utilises a 4.7 inch WXGA, which is 768 by 1280 rather than 720 by 1280, IPS Plus LCD display. So we have AMOLED and LCD technology, which are two of the most popular rivaling technologies. Having said that, typically you'd expect LCD to be brighter and more powerful, whereas in this case the older Galaxy Nexus has a brighter backlight, more powerful colour reproduction, and the depth and resolution is only 2 pixels per inch different. So even though this is slightly higher at 318 ppi, the clarity on both devices is pretty equally set. In general usability, both displays are easy to read. Contrast levels are typically better on the older Galaxy Nexus, but both do in fact struggle in bright sunlight because the backlights on both aren't that powerful. AMOLED technology doesn't also produce as nice whites, so whites are definitely better on the LCD of the Galaxy Nexus, but overall the slightly smaller, slightly older AMOLED screen on the Galaxy Nexus is actually better than the Nexus 4's IPS Plus LCD display. Now, being Nexus devices, both handsets offer the latest version of Android 4.2.1 Jelly Bean, and they have some of the latest features, but between the two devices the comparison is very, very, very close. There's barely any difference between these two handsets. Just to prove it's Jelly Bean 4.2, you can see we have lock screen widgets here, which is one of the latest features to grace Jelly Bean. And if I unlock the handsets, the interface, which is of course using Project Butter, means that the UI is very slick and smooth. Even though this is a dual core and this is a quad core device, the performance in general UI navigation is very, very close. One key example where I can see a difference is that the wider screen, the 768 pixels versus the 720p, means that Google have actually been able to instill an extra column of icons here. So you get 5 across rather than 4 across, as on the Galaxy Nexus, the older Galaxy Nexus. Navigating between these screens as well is equally as fast. And the same applies when you hit the widgets menus too. Beyond that, the only other difference that I've found is with the regulatory information, which you find on the LG settings, which just doesn't seem to appear. Beyond that, both have the same easy access quick settings and all of the same controls that you'd expect from a stock Android device. So the user experience is near enough identical between two, except that you do get a few more icons on the screen with the LG Nexus 4. Beyond that, one other great feature that both phones have is a fantastic camera UI, which is one of the latest additions, which, as well as this autofocus bar here, you can see if I press and hold, you can actually scroll around the settings simply by pressing and holding. And it's a very intuitive way of controlling the camera UI. So that's a really nice addition that both phones have. and means that they are very similar in that respect. Now the biggest difference between these two handsets, despite the aesthetic being rather similar in the UI and the design, is the performance. The Galaxy Nexus, which came out last year, runs a 1.2 GHz dual-core processor with 1 GB of RAM, whilst the new LG Nexus 4 runs a 1.5 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 Pro quad-core processor with 2 GB of RAM. So there's twice the memory and more than double the performance from the processor on board the newer Nexus 4, and that has a significant effect in certain situations. As you've already seen, the UI is very, very similar, and the response times are almost identical. Boot up times on the Nexus 4 are 15 to 30 seconds faster than the Galaxy Nexus. And you'll also see here, if I boot up a high-end 3D game like Nova, the graphical prowess is not only better, but the loading times are significantly shorter. So you have the Nexus 4 on top with the more powerful hardware. Whoops. And there we go. So even from the initial button press, the Nexus 4 was faster to load up the loading screen. So the Nexus 4 has loaded the game now, ready to go. Still waiting on the Galaxy Nexus. So as you can see, that was a much longer wait. Now you might start to notice that lighting effects look better on the Nexus 4, as the frame rates and general animation and visual effects as well. And how much smoother the much more powerful hardware in the Nexus 4 is. This is a perfect example of the differences in just sheer power, but in the Nexus 4. As you can see, there's fire on the building here, as well as smoke and particle effects, which you just don't get on the Galaxy Nexus. If I just move around, we'll get to the next bit. Also, the color temperatures are significantly different. The AMOLED on the Galaxy Nexus goes for a much warmer palette, I think, to try and counteract some of the cool hues that typically affect AMOLED displays. You can also see falling particles here, and there's a lot that is going on the Nexus 4 that isn't happening on the lower hardware, trying to power the same game on the Galaxy Nexus. Now both devices are fantastic, but the newer hardware in the Nexus 4 does obviously win out. 8 megapixel camera, 30 frames a second 1080p HD video versus 24 frames a second. Camera performance is also better, smoother gameplay as you just saw, and also both are available in 8 and 16 gig. This is available in the 16 gig model for around £300. Whilst the 16 gig equivalent of the LG Nexus 4 can be had from Google for £279, or about £380 to £390 elsewhere. So if you can get it from Google, this is absolute bargain, and it is significantly better, despite the lackluster screen, over the older Galaxy Nexus.